Okay, so we'll go on to part 2. We need you to do that. Here we'll talk about actually making the charts.
Oh, I see. You got slides.
Got more slides? We'll do that right at the end.
Okay, so next slide.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Vanna.
You're operator.
So, my mantra here is ask and ye shall receive. Ask our good friend Ernie Iverson. But, he'll prepare these charts for you if you give him enough lead time. And if you don't ask him for 100 charts at level 9, the question is what level charts are going to make most sense for you. At the moment, I'm finding that I'm using levels 5 and 6 in the standard guide levels most frequently. I have occasionally gone to the level 7 charts. Sometimes I'll print them out. They take a lot of paper, but 5 and 6 and I'll show you some other tricks that I've used in the field to try to make best use of the charts. The idea is to try to understand which charts match most closely the field of view that you're going to see and the faintest stars that you'll see with a particular combination of equipment. So if you know you're going to use an 80 millimeter scope with a PC 164 CEX2 camera and a focal reducer, that standard combination, go out, use that, find out how many stars you can see in a typical field of view, and then try to set your charts up in such a way that it matches most closely that. Not only the stars themselves, but also the orientation of your camera, so that you don't find things flipped around. Guide has the ability to print charts in equatorial mode, in alt-azimuth mode, flipped vertically, flipped horizontally, and of course in white or black. I always print these with a white background. I can't imagine the amount of ink it would use to print charts in black, and then you wouldn't be able to see them probably at night anyway. Ernie's there, Ernie's here, but the goal here is to educate yourself so that even if you ask Ernie to do it, you'll know how to reduce your request to make most efficient use of his time. Next, please. So a couple of guidelines. It's not necessary to print charts for time periods before sunset. Makes sense. There's very little likelihood you're going to see a prepoint star while the sun's in the sky, unless it's the moon, which happened last year. We had a couple of chances to use the moon as a prepoint. But the number of minutes or ticks that you tell Guide to print this particular line, you can stop when it gets close to sunset time, and that'll be you'll get an idea of how much prepoint time you're going to have. Next, please. Should you print charts in equatorial mode or alt-az mode? This sort of a question that I use equatorial mode most of the time because as you'll see in some of the charts later on, I always use an equatorial mount, even for small telescopes except for the minis. But for a midi scope, even though it can be carried quite nicely on a small mount like this, I use an EQ1 on some sort of tripod. And I'll explain why that is later. That's for beginners. That can help a lot if you're a beginner like me. Next, please. So you're ready to print. But of course, you've got Guide up, it's all set up, the lines on the chart. Why not just take your laptop out in the field and use it? You don't have to print anything. You can just zoom in and out and look at things. Obviously, that's work. I've done that in the past, but I hate bringing my laptop out, laying it down in the dirt. The screen's really bright, so it ruins your night vision. The batteries don't do well, and nor does the LCD screen do well in New Hampshire in January. All in all, paper's the best approach. If you're in an observatory, different story, right? Things are warm, you're out of the wind. Go ahead and bring your laptop out. You can forget about printing, but if you're going to print stuff, print it in a laser printer or put it in some plastic sleeves to keep the dew from making the ink run on you. That's happened to me. Yeah. and print charts at several levels of detail with overlap from chart to chart. I like to have each chart include about a third of the previous chart, and this is kind of overkill, but that way when I turn a page, I can always find the same star on the page as I'm following the line of declination through the sky. Next, please. So this is the pile of paper that I brought with me. I meant to bring it in from the car. I have charts at level 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I printed the level 3 charts down to magnitude 6.5 and 7.5 because I wasn't sure what the faintest stars I'd be able to see, and I wanted to be able to match what I saw on the screen with what I saw on the paper. The pile of the level 6 charts there, that's about 35 pages. To me, paper's the cheapest thing in this hobby, so I use a lot of it, and I throw away a lot of it at the end of the event. It all goes on a shelf. There's a huge pile of pre-printed charts that I never use anymore, but they're good to use. And of course, if you print them a few days before and you can get yourself out and actually try to pre-point in advance, then you can circle stars on the paper that you find as the sky goes by and use those same points of entry as you're pre-pointing on the night of the event. Next, please. As I mentioned, you want the charts that you print to match as closely as possible the stars, the faintest stars that you'll see when you look on the screen. And Ernie's made some recommendations here that are pretty good for our traditional setups, like a MIDI with a 164 CEX2 and so on, the MIDI. So if you print a level 3 chart, you don't want to include that stars down to magnitude 10 because you wouldn't be able to find anything on the chart. That's the whole sky. So each time you change the zoom level in Guide makes an effort to pick a dimmest star printed or shown that are sometimes a little bit off. So when you change levels, you have to go in and tell Guide, okay, I want to show stars only down to 6.5 or 8.5 or 9, whatever the appropriate level is for that set combination. And so, but if you get a more sensitive camera or a wider focal reducer, that could all change. Or if you just decide to bring out your C8, now suddenly you need charts that go a lot fainter if you want them to match what you're seeing on the screen. So it kind of depends on which equipment you decide you're going to use. And if you're going to bring out several different sets of equipment, it can get a little tedious to print all this stuff, but it increases your chances. Next, please. Yeah, Bob's question was 11 point, yeah, I think that said down to 11.5 for the maxi for the 120.
Scott actually said that we could go to 12 and a half, the maxi. It's his maximum limit. But I found from supporting Paul and supporting Dave that 11 and a half is better than.
Yeah. Yeah, Ernie's saying that 11 and a half is probably reasonable, although Scotty has gone down to 12.5, and I understand that he also uses some techniques to enhance videos and so on. And it depends on spectral class too, as Bob says, right? Right. Make sure you have a watch that has a little backlight on it so you can tell what time it is. If you're not tracking the star, you need to know what time to turn off tracking or to pre-point to the star. And if your watch is dark and you shine your red light on it and you find out it reflects off the glass, you can't tell what time it is. So this watch is nice. It's a Timex Expedition, $30 at Walmart, and it has 2 times. You can set one to UT and then push this little button and the backlight comes on for about 10 seconds and it doesn't ruin your night vision. Next, please. I also find that to get started, I always put a green laser pointer on the side of the scope. I have this little green laser pointer in one of those carriers that goes into your finder scope shoe or bracket, and I carry that from site to site. So the first thing I do when I get to a site is attach that to the scope that's going to be left behind. Make sure it's aligned. They usually are pretty well aligned from scope to scope, but there's a little bit of variation. And then point that telescope at some bright star in the sky and then point your laser pointer at the same, adjust the laser pointer so it's pointing at the same point in the sky, then you'll know that the star you're trying to start your star hop from is actually the star you're pointing at with your telescope. I can't emphasize enough that especially when there are some clouds or if you're in an area of the sky that doesn't have a lot of bright stars, you can move your telescope around a lot and still not be sure that the scope is pointing at the star that you really want it to be pointing at. So having this little aid, you'll see in the lower, what you'll see in the sky on the right is the green laser pointer pointing directly at some bright object. And then when you look on the television screen, you'll see the green beam going up from the lower left, and it's also pointing at that same star. And once you see those two things at the same time, you can be certain that you're pointed in the right place. And then, of course, you can use that green laser pointer to swing through the sky pretty quickly if you know you're going to start from a Prepoint, a star hop beginning star that's easy to find. Now you can just slew over to it until that green laser pointer is on that star, and then turn the laser off, and now you're ready to do your star hopping or whatever requirement are to get to the Prepoint line. But yes, yeah, Bob, I have the O-ring that wraps around the on-off switch, and you turn a little screw and it pushes it. If you have the kind of green laser pointer that has a constant on button at the back and your bracket is large enough, you use that. But in this case, it's the skinny one, and so I use that little O-ring option that attaches to the body of the pointer. So, and the number one mistake that I make is to forget to take that off the telescope when I'm halfway to the next Prepoint site, and I have to go back and retrieve the green laser pointer because I can't get started without it. So that's always, I don't have a second one of those. Next, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, I use the EQ1 mounts for every telescope Prepoint opportunity, and the reason for that is that in this way I can enter the Prepoint line at a star which is either before or after the time that happens to show on my watch, and then by roughly polar aligning this little EQ mount, which means just lie down on the ground and point the RA axis at Polaris, end of story. Then once you get on this line anywhere, even at a time an hour after or an hour before the current time, you can just turn the RA axis knob and watch the stars go by back in time or forward in time, so, depending on where you're trying to get to, without having to manipulate in two axes a sticky plastic Altaz tripod or a photo tripod or something. This way you're using the equipment that you brought along to keep you centered on that line of declination, and by turning the RA knob, you're just basically changing the clock time that the telescope is pointing to, and it's really convenient because you can watch the stars go by, flip the pages on the chart. If your polar alignment isn't perfect, which it won't be, you can just drift up, you can adjust the declination down back so you can recenter that line and then do another 15 minutes and recenter declination again and do another 15 minutes. So it keeps you from getting lost in the sky, which is so easy to do, especially if there's any kind of light pollution. So I always use the little EQ1 mounts on, and in some cases I put them on the three legs that come with it, and in other cases I put them on the modified sprinkler tripods that Scotty designed, which will hold an ST120 as well as the lighter scopes. But don't ever extend the legs on those sprinkler tripods because they slip down over the course of the night. They're slippery. I guess that's to get you to water the rest of your lawn or something. But I've had that happen where the telescope will point exactly on the Prepoint line, and by the time I get back 3 hours later, it has slowly stunk down, so it's pointing just one field of view below where the target star went by at the right time, and that's a complete miss. So keep those legs collapsed, set it on the ground, put some rocks or something on it if you need it. Next, please. And of course, remember, in the east, stars will be rising in the sky. In the west, they'll be setting. You'll have to remember that what you see with a horizontally oriented camera will be different depending on what part of the sky you look in. And so what I do is I simply rotate my camera so that the stars are always moving horizontally through my field of view. And then that matches the chart that I see on the page. So even if the star is going almost vertically down, I still see it going sideways on the TV, and it's one less way for me to get confused about what's going on in the sky. Next, please. Yeah, sometimes your Prepoint star it might be easy to find, but only if a bright star is close to it. So if a bright star is not close to it, but a bright star is somewhere near it, I will print a series of charts that will help me get from the star that's easy to find to the Prepoint star without getting lost in this vast empty gulf of space between this 2.4 star down here and the magnitude 7 Prepoint, which would be bright enough to see on my screen, but I wouldn't necessarily get there if I tried to step across that whole gap without a lot of stars in it to help me star hop. So print some extra overlapping charts that overlap in declination instead of in right ascension, and that'll help you get places. I've seen some of Ernie's charts, and I know he always marks how he's going to get into this spot when he's doing a Prepoint. Next, please. Okay, and I mentioned this, that if you're early or late for a particular Prepoint, just get somewhere on the line of declination and then just turn the RA knob on your equatorial scope, or if you're really good, slide along it by hand with an Altaz mount until you get to somewhere near the time where you are now. Next, please. I bring either a portable television or my score box, which I've brought here. I'll open it up later on. That was built for me by Bruce Berger, who designed that whole idea. That has everything in one box: your VTI, television screen, battery, place to hold your camera, your Canon ZR recorder, and so on. Or if I'm just bringing bits and pieces, I've got a little holder that holds that camera up at the right angle to see it, which I can put on the ground. And even if the ground's a little wet or whatever, it won't destroy the television screen. Next, please. You can also pre-point the night before, which David has done with the paver stones. If you just add 4 minutes to the chart time, or what is it, 3 minutes and 56 seconds, then that will tell you where to pre-point. However, if you're not quite sure whether to add or subtract, or you might be worried about getting confused, you can actually put in a much larger number for the number of steps into Guide for this pre-point chart, and it'll actually wrap that line all the way around the Earth, and the times that it shows for the second iteration will be 4 minutes off of the current one. So if you go to the next chart page, you'll see that. Here now a second set of marks has appeared on the screen, and that's the line of declination from last night and the one from tonight overlapping each other completely. And so you can pick the times off of that if you're pre-pointing the night before. Next, please. Okay, so to finish this, I'm going to play a video of how this process works. It'll just take a couple of minutes, and then we'll take questions after that. I'll load that up right now.
So before, we got a couple of comments.
Oh, okay, thanks.
David Dunham said, we use the moon for pre-pointing for the Regulus Dagmar occultation in Indonesia. The moon was within a degree in the field of view of a minute, or a minute. 39 minutes before the occultation, it was all we could see at that low altitude. And then Garrett Wright said that the watch that you showed also has a flicks mode where you flick your wrist and it lights up hands-free.
Derek has version 2. Okay, I'll load this up now.
Okay.
So here's a little demo that I recorded this morning. So this is Guide. I'm setting the location to Las Vegas from wherever it was before. And Guide has a database of locations on Earth, so you can usually just put in city and state and it knows where you are. And then I go in and I set the time in Guide to the time in UT of the occultation. So in this case, the date and time, 17 October, 8:30:16. Get that all set. Make sure the time is in UT. Click OK. And now we will go to the star that's going to be occulted, or you can go to the asteroid, because at this time they should be on top of each other. And so I put in the name of the asteroid, and Guide jumps to that location. But of course, at this zoom level, we can't see the asteroid or the star. They're both too dim. So we just keep zooming in until we see indication that we're going to see the asteroid number pip up. There it is, 215. And sure enough, the X representing the asteroid is right on top of the black dot representing the star. I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see that. So that's what a magnitude 9 star looks like zoomed in. And if we right click on the star to get its information in Guide, sure enough, there it is, HIP 1783. That's our star that we're we hope is to be occulted. Now we'll go to the animation dialog and click on Add a Trail, all documented on Scotty's website. Make sure, set the number of steps. This is all discussed in the presentation and on his website, kind of a personal preference, but 1 minute, and you set the step size to -1 minute, because we want the animation trail to go back in time, not forward. And sure enough, when we click OK, there's our animation trail right there. It points directly at the target star, and it's labeled appropriately depending on what we decided we said for step size and number of steps and frequency of time labels and so on. And then as we zoom in on that, and there's Lambda Piscium, we can say, oh, that looks like a good pre-point star. We zoom in on it, try and find out what time we should actually pre-point on that. Right-click on it to find out what star it is, all right, in case you have a go-to scope and you want to use that as a go-to target. And then zoom in a little bit more. And now we can right-click on the animation trail above it to find out to the second exactly when we should pre-point with that star centered in our field of view. That'll give us the best chance of having the target star drift through the field of view in the field. And then we can turn on here the CCD screen to show the actual estimated size of your field of view. And what we do is put in the focal length of your scope, so that would be your actual focal length adjusted by whatever focal reducer you had. And then this little rectangle will give you an idea of your, oh, and you tell it what kind of camera you have as well. It has quite a few cameras in the database, so I put super circuits in there for, I think it assumes you have the 3rd-inch chip. And this gives you an idea of just how big your field of view will be on the television screen for a particular camera and focal length. And then, of course, you can now the way Guide works is you don't drag the screen. Wherever you click becomes the new center of the screen on your computer. So by clicking on places on that line to the right, you're bringing those star fields over to the center, and you're looking for additional pre-point opportunities. So we find one here in Aquarius. And then we look for some more, and eventually we find some I think we're near Altair now. Yeah, I think it's Aquila. Yeah, so there's Altair. And when I did my test pre-point back home, that was a nice, easy way to get into this pre-point line. And there's a couple of little star asterisms down there, that little 3-star asterism that were easy to recognize on the screen, but would have been really hard to find without a couple of bright stars nearby to navigate to them. Yeah, right there, that little asterism. Yeah. So seeing those 3 stars in that pattern on the sky just below the star below Altair was very reassuring, and then I knew I was very close to the line. So that's about it. Any questions in the room or on the web? Steve?
I have one decided what screw back to use charts for anyone to it's small for we want to see.
Mhm.
So in that case, I know size of that. My planning on charts, so they're more so I know that can be.
Ah. So
So I'm using my committee all the time.
all the time in the world, right? So Steve's comment is that,
Use a wider chart.
right, if you're using a scope with a small field of view, you might want to use charts that are zoomed in more so you can get more accurately to the second, the time that you need to center the pre-point star. That'll give you your best chance of having the target star in the field of view at the time, because there's always some uncertainty in the time of the occultation. So you want that uncertainty to be small compared to your drift time, and that'll improve your chances. Other questions here, or anybody on the web with questions? Other than about the why?
Flick squat. Hold the light button until it beeps. Then flick your wrist. Not all of that do it.
Okay, I'll try that offline.
This is kind of like clicking your heels 3 times.
And rubbing or something. Okay, well, I have 9 copies of the guide DVD up here if anyone wants one. Thank you.